We have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. We've raised them as black children, and we also live in a community that's 85% black. So I think we consciously decided to do that, and we didn't give them a lot of questions of identity. When they came and asked us, we honestly responded and talked about our lives and the problems. But I think basically they were raised pretty much in the black community.
When they were able to ask questions about race, they knew that they were lighter complexion than most of the children in their classes. They would sometimes be questioned about whether they were white or black, and they just knew to be black. And when they would come home to ask for questions, I said, well, when I registered you, you had to be white, black, or other, and I didn't want you to be other, so I marked black. And but I would tell them, I'm black and your dad's white, and I said, there was an unwritten law. I said that if you had a 1% of black blood, you were black. So I said, that was okay with me. I think that's some good blood. So I would just, I guess, I would always answer it in a not so serious way, but but still truthful with them. And I would say, well, black people, black is not the color you are. It's the kind of people you are. And I said, so yes, you're black folks and you're white as well, but I said, we're living in a community of black folks, and I just decided that would be the dominant culture.
I think we should also say that we had 3 valedictorians. I don't like to brag. I'm not bragging, but we had 3 valedictorians, and we gave them a lot of exposure. We read to them from the time they were very small.
We tried to make sure that our children got a really informed upbringing. We were concerned about their education, and we knew we were the first ones responsible, not the schools, not the teachers. We were. So part of their education was being with us and being exposed to what we were doing, and locally, but as well as when we traveled to conferences, we would usually drive anyway, and taking them out of the school program for that we thought was part of their education. So they drove to California many times, they drove to New York, to Washington, but they got to see they got that exposure. They've seen the Grand Canyons as children. They saw the sequoia trees because they drove with us to some conferences that way. And I remember arriving in the park with the sequoia trees, and we all had on shorts and they had snow on the ground. But that was a learning experience too. They've seen the great divide, of the continental divide.
In 1984, when Jesse Jackson was running for president, they sat on his knee at a rally in Birmingham. We took them on all kinds of, I did take them on many marches and demonstrations with me. Sometimes they've complained about it even to today. Why did we go to that march for the chicken workers in Mississippi and so on? But I think we raised some responsible, intelligent children. I'm not sure curing racism is the answer. I think you can unlearn some things that you've been taught, even deep down. And, it struck me when in President Obama's speech about race in the campaign, he mentioned that even his grandmother spoke to him sometimes about, had some attitudes toward black people that were ingrained in her. And it recalled for me, my mother told me from a very small child, be careful of black people. When you ride on the subway, be careful who you're sitting with and where you are. This is in New York City. So that was those views were communicated to me as a small child, and I feel in some way that I've been privileged to go through an unlearning process, and I'm not totally cured, and sometimes it comes up again. In some situations, you react and say, well, I'm reacting to a stereotype, or I'm reacting to something that isn't really there. And you have to think about that and digest those learnings and understand them. And so I'm saying on the individual aspects of racism that people have as individuals, they need to work through a process of trying to unlearn that and trying to teach themselves a better way.
But I think what we're missing in regards to trying to unlearn acts of race, not just acts, but perspectives, living perspectives of racism, we're missing opportunities with children. We're keeping black and white children apart, in particular in states like Alabama and in the Black Belt region. We're keeping them apart, and that's, to me, that my hope is if they were together more in daily environments, school and sports and social and in each other's homes, they would learn who they are as people, as a person. If they're not going to like somebody, it's going to be because I don't like him for this. I don't like because he doesn't play fair or this or that. Not because he's black or white, but we're not allowing that younger generation to grow up together and experience a shared culture, a shared broader culture. They're not growing up and living that way, and I think we're missing that opportunity, and why it's taking so long to unlearn and just to be rid of racism.